Before we get into this episode, there's something that might be of interest that I wanted to tell you about. Scene and Heard, who run this podcast, have been asked by Scotland Food and Drink to undertake a strategic review of the Scotland Food and Drink Excellence Awards. Now, these Excellence Awards have been going for almost 20 years and are a huge mainstay of the food and drink sector. But it's time to ensure that they're still relevant. So if you have ever been involved in the Scotland Food and Drink Excellence Awards, or even if you've ever had an opinion about them, we would love for you, please, to complete our survey. So if you go to the OnFARM Twitter, which is at @on_farm UK, and click the link in the bio, there will be a tab in there that will take you to the survey, and it should only take you a very short while to complete, but we would be enormously grateful.
Hey Gareth, I thought you were in a nice sealed office, but I hear your dog's wanting its breakfast.
I've got a very determined Jack Russell who, when he locks himself out about 3 times a day, sits outside the window and barks. I'll just go and let him in.
Don't worry, gentlemen. After the year we've had, we're all more than used to interruptions and noises in the background while we're recording. Welcome, everyone, to the final OnFARM episode of 2020. This is Monty. I hope you've had a good Christmas. I know things are strange and not normal, but I just hope you've all had some lovely family time if possible. And I hope, like me, you are looking forward to the new year, 2021. Fingers crossed, eh? Things can only get better. We wanted to squeeze this episode into 2020 as it's the final in the series marking the centenary of the Moredun Research Institute. If you haven't heard our earlier episodes with the Moredun, please do go back and find them in our podcast feed. We started by going back to 1920 and finding out what drove the setting up, the establishment of the Moredun.
Really nasty sounding diseases like braxy and black disease and lamb dysentery. You know, you would have dead animals or big parts of a flock going down and they were just dead.
The hogs and the ewe lambs were dying. What was the problem? That's exactly what the Moredun was set up for. It's a great story and it happened in Scotland and not enough people know about that.
In episode 2, which was Moredun on the Cutting Edge, we brought things up to date.
There's a lot of really exciting science going around, particularly, in the vaccines and the diagnostics field. We're really excited in terms of producing new vaccines for some of the diseases that, really vex farmers in the UK.
And yeah, last time, I hope you enjoyed our virtual drinks party. It was a bit of a different episode for us to do, but we wanted to make sure that we did something a bit celebratory to mark the centenary of Moredun, even if it was only virtual.
I was really disappointed that we weren't able to celebrate Moredun's centenary as we had hoped this year, but I'd like to raise a glass to them because I think a centenary of Moredun is well worth celebrating.
Grab yourself a vol au vent, pick up a cocktail stick with a bit of cheese, a bit of pineapple and a bit of ham, if you must.
I think it's really important that the industry gets to recognise the contribution that they've made and the work that they do. And we should not let times like this pass by without some recognition of the value of that work.
So for this episode, Moredun Foundation chairman Ian Duncan Millar, a beef, sheep and arable farmer from Aberfeldy, has decided that he wants to retire at the end of 2020. Obviously, he hoped he would be retiring at the end of a glittering celebratory year. Alas, that was not to be. What we're doing today is listening in as Ian Duncan Millar, the outgoing chairman, passes on the baton, reminisces a little bit and has a general chat and catch up with his successor, Gareth Baird. Gareth is an arable and beef farmer from Kelso in the Borders.
I'll kick off then. It's been probably the most challenging experience that I've had off the farm, but at the same time, it's probably been quite the most rewarding. There are some fantastic people there, some extremely bright people. But I think the combination of us as practical farmers and these guys as brilliant scientists is actually a combination that works remarkably well. I actually can more or less converse with them because they understand Moredun has always been about converting science into practical help for farmers at farm level. And if any of the scientists try and tell me stories about all the super bugs and all things in highfalutin scientific language, I learned very quickly that all I need to say to them is, okay, what's in it for me? Well, this is all about helping farmers, and I'm a farmer, so how are you helping me? That has been the absolute direction of everything that we do at Moredun. Yes, we've got some super scientists, but they know and they understand that helping the farmers is what the Moredun is all about. One of the things that I've tried to do is to go to as many of the farmer scientist meetings as I possibly can. And these are meetings where our scientists go out with their knowledge to farms at farm level and talk about the things that they are doing as scientists and how that might help the farmers. Well, we took one trip, a short series of meetings up in Orkney, and one of them was out on Westray. Now, I don't know how good everybody's geography is, and Gareth, I think you've maybe been up there too, but we had this meeting in the vestry of the Church of Scotland on Westray, and we were all slightly fearful of what might happen. But we got a turnout of 24 out of a possible 39 or 40 farmers. So almost 2/3 of the farmers that could have come did come. And we had the most fantastic meeting. The meeting only drew to a close because the boys from Papa Westray had to go to get the taxi, which was their boat, back home to Papa. That was one of the memories that has stuck out with me. And these are things, when you take on a job like chairing Moredun, you don't really sort of think and expect. And I'm sure, Gareth, there'll be some of the things that that you'll find you'll enjoy too.
Ian, you've just stirred some memories with me. I remember, I think the first sort of formal occasion I was involved in with the Moredun was when Sandy Trees, Lord Professor Trees, addressed the Moredun members in our lecture theatre. And I remember Sandy Trees so clearly talking about what he called the appliance of science and how he had been so frustrated through his long and very distinguished career that scientists couldn't get in amongst the farmers to get their science delivered for the benefit of livestock. I was very involved with the Crown Estate for 10 years. I was sadly the last Scottish Commissioner for the Crown Estate in Scotland. But during that time, we developed a relationship with the Moredun, which was of huge benefit to both the Crown Estate. Many of the farmers who came to the roadshows were tenants of the farm estate, and the Moredun came in to deliver really well-grounded science. And I remember the one that kind of sparked it a wee bit was up in Tomintoul. We had a cryptosporidium outbreak, which was being blamed on some of our tenants' sheep. And Dr. Beth Wells set about some research into where it was coming from. And the cryptosporidium was actually coming from the deer, which were at a higher level up the hill than the sheep. And it was coming down then into the sheep and then into the water supply. And then from that, we developed, Crown Estate sponsored quite a lot of road shows with primarily Crown Estate tenants, but with the Moredun coming to deliver the science. And the thing that always struck me about these meetings was how frank the farmers were. So they weren't hiding behind saying, I don't have any of this disease or that disease or whatever. They were enormously frank because they saw the advantage to speak plainly with our scientists at the Moredun about what was happening on the ground and thereby to deliver some sort of solution to their problems.
There'll be other examples of that too. And I remember in the early days when we had the enzootic abortion of sheep and HESHA were on the go, and we had a Highland Perthshire Sheep Health Association. And that was very enlightening too, with allowing people to just open up conversations and talk about things like sheep scab, which previously we daren't speak about. And it was from that I suppose my interest in animal health came, and having worked with John Ross, my predecessor, and then got involved in what Moredun's doing. And it's been a fascinating journey. It really has. So I hope that the same fascination stays with you.
I hope so too, and it's kind of in my genetics, I suppose, because my late father was a vet down here in Kelso, as were the 3 generations before him. Indeed, my great-grandfather was a professor of veterinary medicine at the Royal Dick in Edinburgh. It's funny, I was just thinking that the questions that came out about today's podcast really got me thinking. Quite a few years ago, it was 20 years ago, I was involved in Ross Finney's Agricultural Strategy Group. I was chairman of SAOS at the time, the Rural Cooperative Development Organisation. And that was the first time I met Professor Julie Fitzpatrick. And I always remember Julie saying, I can put 10 measures on the table right now that's going to help the red meat industry in Scotland by a colossal margin. And those measures that Julie laid out that day 20 years ago are still, well, thank goodness, a lot of progress has been made around them. But there was the foresight of Julie saying, this is what we have to do to take these measures and these disciplines to make the industry much more profitable and for the benefit of the animals that we tend.
Yeah, I've been aware of Julie's foresight in that, and animal health and welfare. I became aware quite early on that if I could keep my animals healthy, they tended to do me better as a business. And welfare is now, of course, in the modern world, very important. But if we can keep our animals healthy, I mean, I've used this often in public platforms whenever I can, that the animal health bit and the welfare bit, which Moredun promotes so much with the disease management and the diagnostics and so on that we do. If we do that, we actually address some of the big issues of the day: climate change, how our impact as farmers on the environment, and also antimicrobial resistance. All these are huge issues today, and I guess will be going forward, because we're not going to solve these issues in 1, 2, 3, even 5, 10 years. But actually, by improving the welfare of animals, we actually, at the end of the day, improve the bottom line of our farm business and demonstrate to society the contribution we're making to climate change.
Our tenancy here was carried on by my mum, who succeeded my grandfather, who died very suddenly. And in those days, when she took on the tenancy, it was quite something for a woman farmer to take on. And we had neighbours and advisors who were very kind to her. So after I left school and college and things, I was keen to come home. And I always liked working with the animals. So, but Dad always said, get another string to your bow. And I suppose I've sort of meandered my way to some other strings, getting some non-exec positions and things like that. And that's been enormously stimulating. But the older I get, the more I value the farm, to be honest with you. This COVID period's been enormously strange for everyone, hugely stressful. And I think as an industry, the farming industry, bearing in mind some people have been very ill or God forbid, passed away, but as an industry, we've been very fortunate in it with our remoteness and what have you. But here I am coming, getting even more involved with the Moredun, and I suppose it's in the genes a wee bit. And I just love hearing the way these vets talk about what they can do for the animals and things and research. And then as Ian so rightly said, we've got such a bunch of great folk up there with the scientists, but we've also got a colossal number of supporters from all walks of life, but a lot of really able farmers, and the practicalities of our job that they feed into the scientists are just great.
I think one of the things that I've been very aware of, particularly over the last 6 months, but prior to that too, is what we've got at Moredun by way of a national capability. It is a unique facility. It's owned and run by farmers. It's a farmer-controlled board, and yet we are doing work for national good. And when the pandemic struck, we were within a week in conversation with the NHS to offer the facilities which we had to help with the pandemic. So I think, Gareth, the human health bit might fit more into your tenure than it has into mine, but it's been an interesting foresight that we've had during this last 6 months of a most difficult period.
That's a very well made point, Ian. You also referred to our independence, our status as an honest broker in what the Moredun's doing is really, really important. And we would compromise that standing at our absolute peril. So it's really important that all our stakeholders have trust in us and think that we're an honest broker. And I know that flows throughout the whole discipline amongst the group.
It's been interesting this year where our focus has been on the pandemic. But actually, this was supposed to be our anniversary, and we've both been looking forward to celebrate that, because I think we've got a lot to celebrate going back over the 100 years. And the reason that I'm handing over to Gareth now is that we've done 100 years now, and I'd hoped to be part of the celebration in the year that's just coming to a close. And it's right to hand over now to you, Gareth, to take a baton on. But just thinking of what we've done, we were set up in 1920 by a group of farmers who were actually members of the Royal Highland Agricultural Society, and they held a meeting to set the whole thing up. And the reason they did it was that their sheep were dying in numbers which were uncomfortable for them. And they hired a scientist, and they gave him a beat-up old truck, which was slightly converted to become a bit of a laboratory. And it went round the farms, and I have no doubt it went round the farms of those people who were sponsoring them to do it and paying for it. They concentrated on the diseases which were killing the sheep, and very early came up with some quite exciting solutions. Louping ill at that time was a big problem, and that was one of the first vaccines they came up with in the early 1920s. More recently, all the sheep farmers use things like Heptavac and Ovivac and vaccines against enzootic and pneumonias, cattle diseases, reproduction disease, calf diseases. All these vaccines have their solution at Moredun. The centenary was going to be the most wonderful opportunity for us to showcase it and to make more of what we're doing. And I've tried quietly, and I think I've probably not succeeded as much as I would have liked to have done. So a wee challenge for you, Gareth, and maybe doing a bit more in terms of getting the farmers and it's not just the farmers, it's getting the world out there, particularly politicians and decision makers, to understand the contribution that we Moredun have made. And I think the pandemic has maybe helped a bit. But we have made enormous contributions to agriculture. And I think rightly, we have got a lot to celebrate. And hopefully next year might be 100, not 101, but 100 plus one.
Yeah, I can assure you, if I've got anything to do with it, you'll have a lot to do with the 100 plus one celebrations. So we no doubt about that. And I think you're right about the Moredun as an organisation, for all its fantastic achievements, has really kept its light under the bushel, and it is time to celebrate that. And I think it's also time, perhaps we can help to shine a light on some of the great achievements of the other research institutes in Scotland, with whom we have a joint body and report to Scottish Government. So I hope there's a ripple effect that comes out in that regard. And actually, the point you made earlier, Ian, about Bill Gates's words, it'll be very interesting to see where the spotlight is on government, probably on UK government, about pandemic planning.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we make sure we're there at the table and contributing, because we've got a lot of good stuff to contribute. Unless we push ourselves forward, they may not voluntarily come to us looking for answers, although hopefully that is changing a bit. I mean, to me, one of the interesting bits, and it is related to the whole COVID and One Health and one thing, not one thing or another, but the way we help with human health and animal health. If you go back to the start, 100 years ago, the farmers dipped in their pockets to produce the money to pay for that scientist and for that rickety old van that went around. Within about 10 years, they worked out that the government probably could be asked to pick up the bill. And being pretty shrewd farmers, they did ask the government to pick up the bill. And until well into the middle of the 1900s, about mid-1950s, the government paid for everything. And it was only really in the last 20 years that the balance has swung back again to government paying less, and currently less than 50% of our scientific costs, and private enterprise and commercial interest paying the balance. So it has been a huge swing in the way it works. And I suppose with that will come the opportunities to draw more people, not just government, but some of the big pharmaceutical companies, some of the big industry, farming industry, rural industries, to become involved in what we're doing, to actually take a financial interest in what we're doing, because it's to their benefit as well as to ours. And with that, I suppose, will come some of the interest from not just from animal health, but people who are interested in the interaction between animals, the environment, and human well-being. I guess for the future, that will come onto the agenda in a way that we've not seen, that I've certainly not seen during my tenure.
Very exciting indeed, because I love working with teams, full stop, but I love working with positively minded teams, who are looking for answers to problems and things. And if we can continue to have that open mindset to go on and look for solutions to livestock problems, which I'm absolutely sure we will have.
What was set up as our original strapline, our policy 100 years ago, was to improve animal health and welfare through research and education. Well, we're absolutely on that spot today. We are broadening it a little bit now, perhaps from the animal health, but if the animal health improves, then so does the rural environment and all of these big issues that we mentioned a wee while ago.
Another part I find so stimulating is the remit or the demand for the Moredun team's skills and intellect has spread. So we're now working with aquaculture and looking at the expertise of the people in that industry. I just used to come away from these visits absolutely starstruck about their husbandry and the capital invested and the quality of the product that they were producing. So now there's the Moredun and involved with aquaculture. We're working with just about every indeed all farmed animals, from hens to salmon to deer to pigs, cattle and sheep, right across the board. And it's a very exciting place to be.
I think what is not often appreciated is the commercial arm that we've got, doing all the work on vaccine candidates and doing the commercial work to support new treatments, so on, within aquaculture that you mentioned, new treatments, new vaccine candidates, all being tested on a commercial basis by our commercial arm, Moredun Scientific. Given the last 6 months and the importance of the whole COVID pandemic, I find it extremely interesting that our commercial arm was asked to check sterility and purity of some of these vaccine candidates. Nothing to do with efficacy, but it was the purity and safety. Without the various vaccine candidates passing those tests, they were not going to be allowed to go out into the efficacy testing within the human population. So again, quite an important part that we've played. And all the various vaccines that we use on a daily basis on the farm have been tested one way or another, and many of them by our own commercial arm, who do the testing to show that they are safe to use. And I think that work will increase, and I think you might see Moredun Scientific growing quite a bit over the next 5 years. I mean, I'm at the end of my tenure. I give up at the end of this calendar year. So my retirement is slightly out of sequence with our normal September AGMs, but that was all based around finishing the centenary year. So I'm sorry I'm landing you in the middle of a financial year, but I think you'll get over that one. I'll miss it. And Hazel, my wife, tells me all the time that you'll miss it a lot. And I suppose I will, because it's been so stimulating working with these people, being part of it, to feel I was contributing, working with our scientific director, who is one of the cleverest, brightest people I've ever had the privilege to work with. But I feel it's been a partnership because of my practical grounding. And I do the lambing myself, and I do drive the tractor myself. And so that basic knowledge, and I know you do a lot of that too, Gareth. So that's one aspect which I think I'll miss, because it's been part of my life for the last 8 years. So I think you might find yourself getting sort of sucked into working with the team, and perhaps more than I indicated to you when I asked if you were interested in following me. Have I managed to make a difference? Mm-hmm. Did I go to a meeting and actually contribute something useful? Yeah. I think a lot of times the answer to that probably was no. But every now and then I think the answer was yes. And I've certainly felt that working with the executive team at Moredun, applying the practical agricultural bit has been useful both for the industry, but I think also useful for Moredun as well. Yeah. And for the scientists to actually know that here was somebody whose whose wellies were pretty dirty, was taking an interest in what they were doing. So that's been the way I've kind of measured it, if you like. It's also been the way that I've got the most reward out of my participation.
I've always been stimulated by the external positions that I've held, because I hope it makes me think a bit more widely. And as you say, in helping to bring a width of our experience to our scientific brethren at Moredun, I very much would help them. I just on going forward. Well, firstly, I've got absolutely colossal boots to fill, because Ian's just been an absolute leader for everybody and such a clear thinker. And I know, particularly on the public funding side, there's been some very stressful discussions to be held, and to try, and amidst Brexit and all that, trying to plot a course forward has been very stressful for everybody in the leadership roles. But here we are after a pandemic where we've found yet another outlet for our skills and expertise amongst the team. Who knows where that's going to lead? But I'm confident that we've got the intellectual firepower and commitment within the group, right from the scientists right through all the board members, to carry it forward. And earlier on, Ian, you spoke about our profile with our farmer members, and I absolutely agree that we need to work on that, because anybody who is a member of the Moredun is getting a fantastic deal to enhance their knowledge about their own flock or herd's health status and keeping it at a higher level.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've gained out of it, we pick up bits and pieces and we hear the scientists do the talks, and so we understand a bit more than, I certainly understand a bit more than I did to start with. But to me, some of the tidbits you pick up, which you don't really expect. I mentioned Orkney, and on that visit to Orkney, just a wee story which I still remember and still use. Went into this shed on a farm, and here was a big pile of barley and a small pile of oats. And I said to the guy, "Why are you growing oats up here?" And he said, "The reason is when the geese come off the loch, newly hatchlings in May month, they don't eat the oats, but they do want to eat the barley. So we can grow oats around the edge of the lochs. And I've discovered that by mixing a little bit of oats with my barley for my cattle, I think my cattle are doing better." Well, lo and behold, I tried the same thing, not because I've got geese, but because I can grow oats. And actually, that has helped. So I actually spoke then to one of the top nutritionists who I know personally, again, through Moredun, asked him what was going on here. He said, "Oh, yeah, we know all about that." So here was a wee tip I picked up just by chance, by chatting to a farmer on a visit to Orkney. And there have been one or two other little anecdotes as well like that. So, it's not all been one-way traffic by any means. I've picked up a lot. I've picked up a lot of satisfaction, and I hope, Gareth, that you get the same chances and opportunities to pick these wee tidbits up as well. It's been fascinating.
I hope so too. Great. Ian, I think it's time to wind things up, and I'm quite sure you're fed up to the back teeth of hearing that bloomin' Jack Russell barking in the background. But I think the team have got a wee recording or presentation for you.
Hi Ian, this is Scott Brown.
Hi Ian, it's Sally Hammer here in a wet and windy Wales.
Hi Ian, this is Matt Colston.
Our paths first crossed back in 2000 when I was at Britbraid and you were one of the key flocks in the Blackie Seraphinson scheme. Unquestionably, your involvement in that group demonstrated how forward-thinking you are.
You've been a huge asset over the last few years and have worked incredibly hard on their behalf.
And I remember you spending more time listening than talking. When you did talk, it was generally worth listening to.
You're a fantastic ambassador for Moredun, and without question you leave Moredun going from strength to strength.
You also showed that it was never too late for us old dogs to learn new tricks. So keep up the good work and keep in touch.
Hi Ian, it's Gareth Jones from sunny Wales. Sad to hear your time in charge of the board is coming to an end.
Hi Ian, Colin Burnett here. We've worked together now for over 18 years. I was always impressed that you'd done your homework and you came along armed with your highlighted notes, ready to ask the pertinent and challenging questions.
Fond memories also of evenings at the Brunsfield, and it was nice to be able to host you down with us and give you a taste of some bison cottage pie.
Hi Ian, this is Bobby Lennox. I first came across Ian many moons ago in the Council of Young Farmers Association.
I do appreciate life moves on, and I do wish you all the best for the future, and I very much hope that we'll be able to catch up at some point.
And good luck to you with whatever else you decide to do.
Hi Ian, this is Lee. 2 events I remember very distinctly are when you opened up your farm for the day to discuss parasite control and grassland management, which was a great success, and a very memorable trip to Westray in the Orkney Islands. And you really had to earn your keep by making tea in the vestry and serving tea and biscuits to all the farmers, and it was great fun.
On behalf of the livestock industry and the sheep industry in particular, we really do owe you a great debt of gratitude for all the hard work.
Hello Ian, this is Bridget Taylor from Cheshire, but Scottish at heart as I was born in your home county of Perthshire. I feel privileged to have been a director on the board of Moredun under your chairmanship, Ian. Your evident enthusiasm and commitment to the foundation have been inspiring. Your credibility as a farmer who understands and embraces the benefits that Moredun offers to agriculture, as well as your successful other professional and business interests, have ensured that you command wide respect.
Hi Ian, it's Julie Fitzpatrick here. I've really enjoyed working with you over the years in my role as Scientific Director and CEO. You have been a fantastic support to me personally. I've really enjoyed our regular discussions on the phone, with you often on the farm with various farm activities and noises going on in the background. It's been fun, it's been really challenging at times, but your vision and energy and knowledge of the industry has just been fantastic for all of us.
There's an old saying that success has many parents, but failure is an orphan. And at the Moredun Research Institute, it's a building full of proud parents.
Good humour, kindness and ability to ensure all views are heard, but that board meetings run to time, have been great qualities as a chairman. I've also particularly appreciated the updates you've provided the board during the traumas of 2020.
Thank you very much, Ian, and wish you all the best in your retirement.
We will really miss you, and it's been such a pleasure to work with you over the years. So from all of the communications team here at Moredun, may we wish you a very happy retirement.
But I hope we will still see you regularly at Moredun functions, if there are ever any face-to-face meetings again.
Wishing you all the very best for the future, Ian, and I hope you make good use of all that spare time you're about to have.
Thank you for all you've done as chairman of the foundation and for your expertise, support and dedication for all that Moredun stands for.
Best wishes. Bye.
Yeah, no, it's nice. If people have said such nice things, yes, it's gratifying, but it also, I find it rewarding that people think maybe I have done it tolerably well. So that is hugely gratifying, yes.